Power doesn't corrupt slowly, it consumes you power. Everyone thinks they want it. Some chase it their entire lives. Others stumble into it by accident. But almost no one is ready for what it actually does to you. We've been told that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts, absolutely a quote we attribute to Lord Acton. But what if that's not quite right? What if power doesn't corrupt slowly, like some slow drip of moral erosion? What if power consumes you not over time, but the moment you let it become your identity? What if the second you taste it, it starts eating away at the parts of you that make you human? Let's start with a simple question. Why do you want power? Be honest. Think about what you'd do if you had it. Influence, control, authority, these things feel good because they feed our illusion of agency. We want to believe we are the ones who decide, who shape the world, who change outcomes. And it's not wrong to want influence if your intentions are good. But here's the catch. Power doesn't care about your intentions. It doesn't reflect your values, it amplifies your impulses. And if you're not grounded in something deeper than ego, power will find the softest, most vulnerable part of your psyche, and it will expand it until it defines you.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Think about a time when you had even a little bit of power. Maybe at school, at work, in a relationship. Did you notice how quickly the dynamic changed? Did you feel the subtle shift in how people responded to you? Did you start to enjoy the feeling of being listened to, obeyed, praised? That's the first taste. It's not evil. It's natural. We're wired to respond to status, to dominance, to hierarchy. It's part of our evolutionary inheritance. But awareness is what separates us from falling into those patterns blindly. And most people don't have that awareness. So power doesn't corrupt them slowly, it consumes their ability to see clearly, almost instantly. Philosophers, psychologists, and spiritual leaders have warned us about this for centuries. Nietzsche said, "Beware that, when fighting monsters, you yourself do not become a monster." Buddhist teachings caution against clinging, because what you cling to begins to define your suffering. And in the modern world, we see this play out in real time. Politicians rise with promises of justice and fall under the weight of their own unchecked pride. CEOs build companies with innovation in mind and end up defending monopolies. Influencers start with passion and end up addicted to attention. The moment power becomes part of your identity, it begins rewriting your priorities. You stop asking what's right. You start asking what protects your position. And that's what makes power so dangerous. It rewires your internal compass. Not slowly, not over decades, but as soon as you accept it without resistance. It doesn't wait for you to become evil. It just makes you forget what it's like to be powerless. And once you forget that, you lose empathy. You stop listening. You stop seeing the people around you as equals and start seeing them as tools, threats, or obstacles. And the worst part, you might not even notice it happening. Because power doesn't scream, it whispers, it flatters, it rewards you for controlling others. And the more you give into it, the more it convinces you that you deserve it. Now, I want you to really think about this. What would you do if no one could stop you? Not in a fantasy scenario, but honestly. If your voice carried absolute weight, if every decision you made shaped the lives of others, if no one could question your authority, what would surface in you? Would you be fair, compassionate, wise? Or would your worst fears and desires finally be given permission to breathe? We like to believe that only bad people become tyrants. But history tells a different story. The tragedy isn't that power falls into the wrong hands. It's that no hands, not even the purest ones, can hold it without shaking. Because power feeds the ego, and ego is always hungry. It can wear the mask of morality, of leadership, of service. But underneath, it's devouring your ability to doubt yourself. And doubt, real, honest self-questioning, is the only thing that keeps power from becoming tyranny. So what can we do? Are we doomed to be consumed the moment we gain any control or influence? Not necessarily, but it requires a level of self-awareness that most people never develop. You have to know your own shadow. You have to recognize your hunger for status, recognition, approval, and meet it with discipline. You have to surround yourself with people who challenge you, who aren't afraid to say no, who don't benefit from your power. And most importantly, you have to remember your smallness, not in a way that makes you weak, but in a way that keeps you human. Because the truth is, power doesn't corrupt slowly. It doesn't wait for you to mature. It doesn't give you time to prepare. It consumes you the moment you stop watching it. The moment you say, "This power is mine," instead of, "This power is a responsibility I must carry carefully." So ask yourself now, do you want power or do you want impact? Because those are not the same thing. And if you chase the first without understanding the second, you won't just change the world, you'll lose yourself in the process. The mirror of control, why power reveals, not creates, who you are. We often imagine power as a sort of magical transformation. Like once you get it, you rise above your limitations. You become something new, a leader, a ruler, a force to be reckoned with. But here's the thing no one tells you. Power doesn't change you into someone else. It changes the lighting in the room. It doesn't build new character, it exposes the one already there. The moment you gain control, the mask comes off. Not because you're trying to deceive anyone, but because there's nothing left to hide behind. The real you steps forward. And that's the terrifying part, because most people don't actually know who that real you is until the stakes are high and no one can stop them. But you see, when you're powerless, it's easy to be humble. It's easy to be patient, kind, even selfless, because you have to be. You're adapting to survive. You're negotiating because you lack leverage. But once you have power, the constraints disappear. The question isn't, how do I survive, anymore. It becomes, how do I shape the world to reflect my will? And that's where the truth comes out. That's when your values stop being theories and start becoming actions. If you're someone who craves validation more than integrity, power will magnify that desire. If you've secretly resented others, power will give you the tools to control or punish them. And if you believe the world owes you something, power will become your weapon of entitlement. But the reverse is also true. If you are deeply rooted, if you know who you are, and you've wrestled honestly with your shadow, then power doesn't consume you. It reveals your discipline, your restraint, your clarity. It shows the world that you don't use control to dominate, but to serve, that you can hold authority without losing your humanity. That's rare. It's not flashy. It's not dramatic. But it's powerful in a way that few people ever understand. Think of the most dangerous kind of person, not the one who seeks power openly, but the one who doesn't even realize how badly they want it. The ones who believe their motivations are pure, unquestionable. The ones who say, "I'm doing this for the greater good," but never question who defines that good. Power doesn't corrupt them slowly, it gives them permission to bypass self-awareness entirely. Because they don't see it as power. They see it as destiny, as righteousness. And that's when power becomes most dangerous, when it's invisible to the one who holds it. So, if you really want to understand someone, don't listen to what they say when they're powerless. Watch what they do when they're in control. Watch how they treat those who can't fight back. Watch how they respond to criticism, to resistance, to failure. Power doesn't lie. It clarifies. It's the most honest mirror we'll ever stand in front of. And most of us aren't ready for what it reflects. But this isn't just about politicians or billionaires or celebrities. This is about you. Because power exists on every level. Be in friendships, in relationships, in families, be in classrooms, in workplaces. It's not always about money or status. Sometimes it's about emotional leverage, or the ability to influence others quietly through admiration or guilt or fear. Ask yourself, where in your life do you hold power right now? And more importantly, how are you using it? Are you listening? Are you serving? Or are you subtly using your influence to protect your ego? Most of us don't want to admit we have power, especially when we think of ourselves as the underdog. But that denial is exactly how power becomes destructive, when we pretend we don't have it. Because if you can't see your own power, you can't be responsible with it. And if you can't be responsible with it, it will act itself out unconsciously in manipulation, in silence, in control disguised as care. That's why the real work isn't about rejecting power. It's about preparing for it, training yourself to recognize it, to hold it with humility, to use it as a mirror, not a mask. Because when you look into the mirror of control, you're not just seeing yourself more clearly. You're deciding who you want to be when no one else is watching, when no one can stop you, when you have the power to shape the outcome. That's the moment that defines your character, not the moment you gain power, but the moment you realize what it reveals. So here's the question to sit with. If power doesn't build you, but reveals you, what is it revealing right now? Not someday, not later, right now. In your choices, in your reactions, in your silence and your speech. Are you proud of what it's showing? Or are you hiding behind the idea that you're still not powerful enough to be dangerous? Because the truth is, we're all powerful in ways we don't fully understand. And the sooner we stop waiting for some grand title or spotlight to consider ourselves in power, the sooner we can begin doing the real work, but becoming someone who power can't consume. The hunger never ends. How the ego feeds on influence until you disappear. There's a moment in every person's life, usually when they're beginning to taste success, admiration, or control, where they feel something shift inside. It's subtle, almost imperceptible at first. You achieve something and people start paying attention. You get praise, followers, money, or even just respect in a small corner of your world. And something inside whispers, more. Not that was meaningful, or I'm grateful, but simply more. And that voice isn't ambition, it's not drive. It's the ego awakening to its favorite drug, influence. And once it gets a hit, it doesn't let go. It keeps feeding. It keeps stretching. And eventually, if you're not careful, it eats you. The ego doesn't want achievement, it wants recognition. It doesn't care about truth, it craves affirmation. It doesn't seek meaning, it seeks relevance. And influence gives it all of that. It gives you the illusion that you matter more than others, that your voice deserves to be louder, that your presence should shift every room you enter. Influence is addictive because it masks itself as purpose. You convince yourself you're doing good, that you're leading, that you're inspiring. But deep down, something darker is forming. But you stop asking why you're doing what you're doing. You only ask, how can I keep this going? And that's the trap. Influence begins as a tool for impact, but the ego turns it into a mirror. You start seeing yourself through the eyes of others, through likes, applause, compliance. And when the applause fades, as it always does, the ego panics. It tells you you're irrelevant. It tells you you're failing. And what do most people do? They chase more. They begin to compromise, not all at once, but in small ways. They say what people want to hear. They avoid risks that could damage their image. They stay safe, curated, hollow. They trade depth for attention, truth for popularity, presence for performance. And slowly, the person they were, the person who once wanted to build, to love, to serve, disappears behind the performance. This is why so many people who attain power or fame eventually spiral. Not because they were evil to begin with, but because they mistook attention for identity. They stopped being a person and started being a persona. And here's what no one tells you: the persona feels real. It feels powerful. It gets you results, but it's never satisfied. Because it's not you. It's a projection built to survive in a world that rewards surface over substance. And the longer you feed it, the more afraid you become of being seen without it. So if you're gaining influence, if people are starting to look to you, follow you, listen to you, pause, step back, ask yourself, what part of me is growing? Is it my ego? My need for validation? Or is it my ability to be honest, grounded, present? Influence is not inherently bad. In fact, it can be one of the most powerful forces for good. But only if you remain rooted. Only if you remember that being seen is not the same as being whole. That being followed is not the same as being wise. That being praised is not the same as being right. The hunger never ends. That's the nature of ego. But you don't have to feed it. You can notice it. You can laugh at it. You can say, thank you for your concern, and return to what matters. The work. The work. The people. The truth. Because when you stop chasing influence, something strange happens. You become free. Free to tell the truth. Free to fail. And free to be forgotten. And paradoxically, that's when your influence becomes real, because it's no longer about you. It becomes about the work, the message, the love behind it all. So here's your reflection. Is your influence an extension of your truth or a substitute for your identity? Are you building something that will last when the spotlight fades, or are you clinging to relevance because you're terrified of what's underneath? The ego will always whisper more, but the soul only ever asks, is this real? The exit door. Why true power is the ability to walk away at some point. You face a decision, not the kind you schedule or prepare for, but the kind that arrives quietly, and unannounced, in the middle of your success. It's the moment when you realize you could keep going, climb higher, gain more, command more, be seen by more people, and no one would stop you. In fact, they'd cheer you on. But something inside you starts to wonder, why am I still doing this? Oh, that question is everything. Because in that moment, you're not just weighing your next move. You're being asked, are you still in control, or has power become your master? And your answer will decide whether you rise with integrity or disappear behind your own image. True power isn't control over others, but it's control over yourself. It's not how many people listen to you, it's how willing you are to speak the truth, even when it costs you. And the greatest test of that isn't when you're struggling. It's when you're thriving, when you've built something that works, when people expect you to keep going, to deliver, to maintain the empire. That's when the temptation to stay becomes strongest. That's when the ego whispers you can't leave now. Look at everything you've built. But that's the moment you ask yourself, do I own this power or does it own me? Most people never walk away, not because they're evil, not because they're weak, but because they believe the story that they've become irreplaceable, that without them, things would fall apart, that their presence is essential. This is the lie power tells you, that your worth is tied to your influence. That if you stop producing, stop being seen, stop commanding attention, you'll disappear. But that's not disappearance, that's freedom. Freedom from the performance. Freedom from the pressure. Freedom to reconnect with the part of you that just is, even when no one is watching. The strongest people in history were not the ones who held on the longest, but the ones who knew when to let go. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote about it constantly, the temporary nature of power, the importance of staying humble, the need to remember death. He ruled the greatest empire on earth and still reminded himself daily that he was just a man. That one day someone else would sit in his place. That the power he held was not his to keep. And he was right. It never is. So what does this mean for you? It means you have to build a relationship with power that includes an exit strategy. Not a cynical one, not a backup plan, but a deep, internal understanding that nothing you hold defines you. That every title, every following, every ounce of recognition is borrowed. And that the moment you're no longer willing to walk away from it, you've already lost the essence of who you are. Think about this. Could you let go of your influence right now and still know your worth? Could you walk away from your audience, your platform, your authority and still feel whole? If not, then that power isn't yours. It owns you. And the longer you hold on to it without question, the more it will shape you into its image. But if you can walk away, if you can lay it down without fear, then you've discovered something rare. Not just freedom, but peace. Because in the end, the only power worth having is the power you can put down. Anyone can climb, anyone can win, but very few can walk away at the height of their influence and still feel complete. That's the paradox. Letting go doesn't make you less powerful. It shows that you were never defined by power to begin with. You were defined by who you are when no one is watching. So ask yourself, right now, what would I become if I stopped needing to be powerful? What would I do if I didn't need to be seen, followed, or admired? Who would I be if I could walk away and still feel whole? That's not weakness. That's mastery. That's freedom. That's the kind of power that doesn't consume you because you've already proven you don't need it to exist.